Well, that's a great question. I have a bunch of things that I do that make me happy. So I want to think of one that is like more of a newer practice. Because, for example, fitness is something that I do on a consistent basis that I feel like
Mm-hmm.
helps. Um, I love to take my kids boating. It's like time where I can just hang out with my kids and their friends and that whole thing. Um, Again, this is not a new one, but it's one that I'm really focused on right now. So, you know, uh, consistently, my wife and I have date nights, right, once a week,
Hmm.
and I look forward to them. I look forward to them for a whole bunch of reasons, but one of the reasons here recently is we found a new restaurant. I think steak is my love language. I think, and so and so we found a new restaurant that we've been going to that that we both kind of look forward to, like on a Friday night. So that's one I think that we really look forward to. One of the things I encourage people to do. It's a long answer to your question, but it's what's called to create positive expectancy.
Hmm.
So sometimes in your mind, the expectations for something are actually more impactful than the thing itself. So, for example, you tell your kids we're going to Disneyland or whatever it is, right? Or
Hmm.
going on a date night, and the positive expectancy of what's going to happen and how they're going to respond in Christmas morning, and they're going to see the presents, like all of the expectations, the positive expectations. You can have the same dopamine and serotonin drops through vision, through expectation,
Hmm.
than you sometimes have when it happens. I don't know if you guys ever had this happen where the trip's cool, but it was more cool kind of getting the kids fired up about the trip.
Hmm.
It's like the trip was fine. And so I think you know as business leaders and as husbands and so on, you want to be constantly creating positive expectancy, like positive expectations. Some vision or some hope. So when your wife's, it's Tuesday and she's stressed out and she's been chasing around, just holding the fort down.
Hmm.
She knows that Friday is going to be awesome because,
Hmm.
you're going on a date. So you always have that positive expectation to look forward to.
And it's good to have, things to look forward to like that at the end of the week because it kind of makes, like you said, it's that expectation. So all week, it's that one thing you can look towards
Yeah.
instead of just being drowned by everything else. You've got
But yeah,
something that
all
kind of
the,
keeps
all
you
the
above water.
mundane. Yeah. So vision, what that does, it creates vision, right? And what vision does is vision answers a question that we subconsciously ask when times are tough. And the
Hmm.
question is, will it always be this way? Because if it's always going to be this way, meaning this way, like this crappy moment, if it's
Hmm.
always going to be this crappy moment, then man, we make way different decisions if it's always going to be this way than we do if no, it's not always going to be like this. We're going to get through this. Like better days are ahead. The sun's
Hmm.
coming up in the east. Like we're going to be just fine. And so vision is really important as a leader of a home or leader of your life or leader of a business is to you're casting vision that it's not always going to be this way. It's not always going to be the hard times.
Hmm. Well, it's like it gives that hope, and hope can be a big game changer in a crappy
100%.
day. Yeah.
Yeah. Then like also like it programs your brain to look for things
Yes.
that will
Yes.
prove that to be true. Because if you're
100%.
always looking at the crappy situation or
Yep.
whatever, and you're thinking this is always going to be like this, well, your brain then tries to confirm those thoughts or those sayings or so. I really like
100%.
casting vision. Yeah.
Yeah. That confirmation bias starts to set in to where you're confirming that life sucks,
Hmm.
versus looking for like, yo, this life is great and this is happening for me. And it's so interesting. It starts with that thought. So you get cut off on the street. Your thought is, what a freaking jerk.
Hmm.
The emotion from the thought is, I'm pissed and I'm going to get revenge, or whatever. I'm going to flip him off. I'm going to yell at him. I'm going to swerve back, whatever. And then that leads to a negative outcome, right?
Hmm.
Versus the thought is, man, this person maybe has got to get home because there's an emergency or something's going on. So that's the thought. What's the emotion? The emotion's more peace. The action is now like, I'm going to hit the brakes. I'm going to let him give him some distance, see if we can help him to, cross 4 lines. And the outcome is positive. So man, those thoughts, what you choose to focus on, it does expand, and what you choose to focus on, you do feel, because the focus equals the feeling. You focus on it and it shifts the emotions of what it means
Hmm.
to you. You create new meaning to it.
I was listening to an episode of your podcast, and I don't remember the lady's name. You guys were talking about how she had a good vibe, and even just going with that and kind of changing your mind with that, it gives off that too. Where people are like, oh, this person's vibe is cool because you're always focused on the positive instead of the negative outcome.
Yeah, love that.
As we're going through, we kind of want to talk about your books. We talked to a lot of authors and just kind of going, what was the motivation or the mindset behind your book?
Yeah, so to me, it was really two things. The book's called Be the One. So it's really two things. I believe that success is an identity process. So you're never going to outperform the way you see yourself. If you see yourself as a loser, you're not going to show up and play the game and put in the reps like a winner would. If you see yourself as a winner, you're not going to roll over and quit like a loser would, because it wouldn't be consistent over time with your identity. And so success is an identity process. So the first thing to recognize is that you are the one. And if you think of your parents and you think of your grandparents, and you think of your great grandparents, parents was 2, grandparents was 4, 8. If you go back 12 generations in your lineage, 12 generations was about 400 years. And it was 4,094 people. 4,094 people from all over the world came together to create you. These folks lived for, bled for, cried for, died for, gave everything they had for you to have this moment. You are the one that this happened for. And it reminds us that our life has value and purpose and meaning. You're not here by accident. This is not random. Like, you are the one. And so once you realize that, that's the success as an identity process. You realize who you really are. Then the next part is to be. So you'll notice the book's not called Become the One. So in other words, you got to like become the one. No, dude, you are the one. The invitation of life, or the challenge of life, is to be the one you were born to be the one that lives a life, and be the one that writes a story that future generations look up in their family lineage and they say, it was her, or it was him. He's the one that changed it for us. The abuse stopped with him. The addiction stopped with him. The financial principles that changed our family's life forever. It was my great, 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 great grandma, or my great, 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 great grandpa. They're the ones that like shifted it for our family. And so, I tell people, you'll never be this old. You've never been this old before, and you'll never be this young again. And we can't always control what happens, but you can control what happens next. And so you can make new decisions right now to say, I'm going to be the one for my family. And so that's, you start saying, what do I need to cut out of my life, or what do I need to add to my life to go be the one I was born to be? Go step into it. It's a little bit of that Gandhi concept of like, to be the change you wish to see. So in other words, not hope everyone else changes, or, you just start doing it and living it and acting as if you're the one. You step into it today. And so I had that on my heart for a lot of years. I look at like my life and my career, and I came from a broken home age 12, moved 13 times in the 7 years through the teenage years. My parents were both involved in my life, but, lived at my single mom's house. I have no professional background. I was making pizzas and doing construction work. I used to work at the mall. I tease people, the mall's where all of us old people used to go, and the Amazon was a river, right? We'd go hang out at this place called the mall. And, I had no college education. I have no professional background. And, I've built multiple different, multi-million-dollar businesses. I've done, billions of dollars in revenue. Our business right now, we launched a company called Make Wellness, which is the leading company in the world with natural peptides, nature-based peptides. So instead of having to inject, instead of being like a synthetic chemical compound from a lab, these are from nature. And instead of having to inject them, you can actually take them like a nutritional supplement, almost like a super supplement. And, we've created one of the fastest growing wellness companies anywhere in the world over the last number of months. And so I share all that with you to say, like, how did that happen? And part of it happened for, I was just like, felt this calling in my heart. I know this sounds, I don't know, I hope it doesn't sound either cliche or boastful. I don't, it's just true. It's just the way I felt. But I felt like this calling in my heart, like, yo, you're the one. Like, you got to do something with your life, Don't just live and breathe and die. Like, you got to do something with your life. And I think that calling, if you will, in your life, or that identity update or upgrade in my life, I was like, I'm not going to be a victim, dude. I'm going to like own my life and go see if I can make some stuff happen. So I think it all starts in identity. And once you realize who you really are, then you start building new patterns and habits to really be the one you were born to be.
Well, you kind of talked about, my next question was, how in the book you talk about breaking generational patterns. And I was going to ask, like, what's something you've intentionally done to break, but it sounds like that's what it is you're doing. You're just not being, you don't have that victim mentality like a lot of people do nowadays.
Yeah. So one of the things I teach is it's what I call rid and raise. So think of it this way. Imagine there was a pulley system. So like as the one side went down, the other side went up, and as the other side went down, the other side went up. So what if you were to rid yourself? So imagine this side comes down. You rid yourself of all entitlement
Mhm.
that the world owes you something. Like I remember when I was about 8 years old, I said something to my dad. I don't even remember what it was, but dude, my dad like grits his teeth. Like he just got all freaking intense. I'm like, yo, bro, what's up? And he like put his fingers like right in my sternum. Now he didn't touch me, but I'm telling you, he was like a millimeter away. And he has this grit teeth and he goes, you think the world owes you something? I was like, what did I say? He's like, you think the world owes you something because your last name's Prince? He goes, the world doesn't owe you anything. He goes, if you're gonna make, if you're gonna make something of your life, you got to go out there and make it happen.
Mhm.
It's just like, dang, okay, Dad. And what's so interesting, I remember thinking how intense he was. Guys, I would give my kids the shirt off my back for reals. I'd do anything for them
Mhm.
unless I feel like they're entitled
Mhm.
or that they're spoiled or that they feel like someone owes them something that I do or their mom does or that their coach does or that the school does or that the government does or their church does or a friend owes them. I'm just like, yo, no one owes you anything. So it's this idea if you just rid yourself of all entitlement and you what that does is at the same time you raise your personal responsibility. It's like your personal ownership. I think step one, like almost foundation to changing your life is a rid and raise process. Ridding yourself of all entitlement, raising your personal responsibility, stop whining and blaming, complaining about other people or the situation. Just like, yo, I'm going to own my life. Like I'm going to go
Mhm.
be the one in my life. And it's a little bit of a painful, if you think about it, it's kind of a painful thing to do. Rid yourself of all entitlement, raise your personal responsibility. Because that's a little bit of like, yo, I got to own my own stuff now. Like, dang it, dude. Like some of the crutches that we've been using, we can't use as much anymore.
Yeah.
With that said, though, it's literally probably the most liberating feeling in the world once you really get there. And the reason why is because you start saying, I'm not a victim to all these circumstances. I'm not a victim to the challenges of life. I'm not a victim to, you know, the way I was raised or my parents or whatever. Like I'm going to be a victor of my life. I'm going to own this stuff and start making new decisions. And so that rid and raise concept is how I think about it. But I think the foundation really is that ownership of saying, I'm going to raise my personal responsibility. Like I'm going to own my stuff.
Yeah, and not an easy process, like you've already said. It's like I've had it in my own life where it's like, okay, dad didn't create a safe environment for me growing up. I started seeing the same patterns in my life, and I'm like, I can either sit here and say enough is enough, or my kids go through the same thing I went through, and the generational cycle just keeps on continuing. I can sit there and blame him all I want, but that doesn't change the circumstance.
Yeah.
The circumstance is that happened. It sucked. It shouldn't have happened. But what am I going to do to change it? Because as an adult, you take on all that baggage and you're like, okay, I can either dump all the rocks out and start anew. Like you said, just kind of like this comes down, all those rocks come out, and you start owning everything. So it's really cool. I like that analogy that you use.
Yeah, let me hit you guys with this concept. So it's a little formula that I learned. It's not one that I invented. I've actually heard multiple people teach it. I remember learning it first through a book called Above the Line by Urban Meyer, the football
Yeah.
coach. I know Jack Canfield's taught. So I don't know who invented this concept, but it's a little simple formula. It's E plus R equals O. So super simple. E plus R equals O. It stands for event plus response equals outcome.
Mhm.
And I'll share with you three insights or three takeaways that as I've kind of lived my life, as I've looked at that and kind of considered this little formula of event plus response equals outcome, E plus R equals O. First thing is that you'll notice that the E doesn't equal the O. So in other words, the events of your life don't equal the outcome of your life. Now, a lot of times we say, this is what happened, therefore this is who I am. Like this event happened. And I'm not suggesting that folks haven't been through some real life
Right.
stuff, like some
Mhm.
real life events, like painful stuff. However, we're not victims to the events of our lives. We're victors to our response. We get to own that R. So it's the event plus the response that equals the outcome. So you got to own your own R. Like you got to own the way that you show up. Viktor Frankl was hauled off into the Nazi concentration camps. Maybe the darkest time in human history. There's been some real dark moments. with humans to humans, but this might be maybe the worst. And what he said is that no matter what the Nazi guards took from him, they couldn't take what he called the gap. He said, I got to own my gap. The gap was his response. So no matter what they took on the event, and it's the worst, maybe the worst time in human history, he couldn't always control the event or the outcome, but he could always control his gap, which was his emotional response, how he chose to show up emotionally. Second thing is, you'll notice the R is not react, the R is respond. And great leaders don't react, great leaders respond. Like a great dad doesn't react when the kids do stuff. The great dad responds to it, right? You get to own that response. And then the third quick observation is that your E creates an R for others. Your response will create an event for others. And so you start asking yourself, like, what emotional response am I creating for those around me? DJ, you're saying like, yo, my dad did this, the way he reacted created events for us. You're like, yo, I'm gonna like show up with a new response so that I create new events for the kids. And then there's that old story. It's a true story, but there was a study done on two twin boys. And the father of these two twin boys was in and out of prison, strung out on drugs, very abusive. The one son was strung out on drugs, very abusive, in and out of prison. The other son was a top executive for a Fortune 500 company. He had a beautiful family, wife and family. He was a contributing member of his community. They said to the first son that was strung out on drugs, in and out of prison, they said, how did you end up this way? And this kid says, isn't it obvious? He said, look at my father. And they said to the other guy, how did you end up this way? Fortune 500 company executive, beautiful family, beautiful member of your community. He said, isn't it obvious? Look at my father. And they just they had the same events, but they had different outcomes. And the reason why is they both chose different responses to those events.
It's that easy road and that not so easy road, and yeah, I love that because I've never heard that before, and it definitely, when you just say it, it's just, you can see how people's lives are for, like, how you can take that into being a dad, like you said, just with your kids, how you treat your kids differently is just 100% going to depend on how they come out. But if you're that good dad, you show up every day, and your kids see that, hopefully the outcomes can become, and they're going to take that response for the better. So it goes back to that mindset too, where what are you putting out of the world?
Yeah.
So, and it's very important for us as dads to be putting out the stuff we want our kids to see versus, being an alcoholic or drunk or on drugs and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's awesome. So going to the next question, you talk to hundreds, thousands of people. How are you using that to teach your kids to kind of go through life?
Yeah. One of the strategies that I've employed over the years is what I call enlist your family. And so your business goes from your business, your career goes from your career to the family career, the family business. Even your hobbies go from dad's hobby. And so they kind of start resenting, like, dad freak, to like a family thing. You do things together as a family, like you enlist them. So like I've had times, where I would sit my kids down. I'm like, all right, for this next, I'm starting a new season, or for this next season, it's gonna be hyper busy. And they knew going in, okay, but then I would tell them, here's what it means for our family. This is what it's going to equal for us. This is the benefit of all this hard work. I'll give you an example. I've done it with career. I've done it with, I did a men's physique competition once, this about 8 years ago, did a men's physique show. And I wanted my kids, I enlisted them in this process. Yo, I'm going to be eating different foods. I'm going to be working out. I wanted them to watch physically watch me grind, like watch me go through the ups and the downs and the injuries and just the challenge of it. And I'd go to the track and run bleachers. Like my kids would come with me. My little boy at the time, AJ, who's now 12, so this was 8 years, so he's 4. I used to take him and I would hold him and run the bleachers, and like, he'd laugh and think it's cool. And I'm like, dude, this is exhausting. But the point is he was part of it. Like he was part of the journey. So when he's, instead of like resenting when you're eating something different than them, they cheered it on, like, hey dad, good for you, So you want to also create rewards as part of enlisting your family. Here's the sacrifice. Here's the reward. People are not motivated by goals. They're motivated by rewards. Now, goals are super important, but what we're really saying when we set a goal is, what is the reward from this? How am I going to feel? What's the benefit of this? That's actually what moves people. It's like, it's an old Bible story, the David and Goliath Bible story. If you remember the story, David's really small, Goliath's really big, right? So the story we were told in school was that David shows up and everyone runs away because they're scared of Goliath. And David's like, wait, guys, who is this uncircumcised Philistine? Now, none of us knew what that meant when we were little kids, and you guys can explain it later to your audience. But so that's not what happened. What happened was, the scripture says that all Israel fled, which means everyone ran away from this guy. This guy was terrifying. He wasn't just some big, huge guy, by the way. He was the champion of the Philistines. This guy had been groomed since he was a little boy to be a champion. So over the campfire that night, David overhears an interesting conversation. He hears some of the guards, and one of the guards says to the other, have you heard the reward for the man that killed Goliath? And the guy goes, yeah, I've heard it. He goes, he'll be a prince. He'll own land. He'll marry the princess. And as long as he'll ride on a horse. As long as there's a king on the throne of Israel, he'll never pay taxes. And all of a sudden, David's like, wait, what? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine? Like, yo, you get all that reward for killing this dude? It wasn't the goal of Goliath that turned David on. It was the reward of the princess that turned David on. And so when we translate things into rewards for our kids versus just goals, like, hey guys, dad's got a goal. We're going to, whatever, mom's got a goal. You translate it into, that goal means we're going to Disneyland. That goal means we're going to get some ice cream. In other words, the reward is we're going to go to the park and whatever, we're going to go fishing. We're going to, whatever your thing is. And you can make them small or big depending on the size of the goal, right? The point, though, is the kids will then say, hey, mom, we got to get 5 customers, guys. Dad's got to work the phones, get 5 more customers. Dude, the kids watch you and they're like, hey, dad, how many customers do you have? You're like, I'm at 3. They're like, well, dude, why are you on the couch? Let's go. We got 2 more because I want to go fishing. Like, all of a sudden, the kids, it's not your goal, it's their goal. It's the family goal, right? They're enlisted in it, and you translated a goal into a reward. And that is really, really powerful. So that's something I've tried to do is, I feel like my kids, seriously, I feel like if they came on right now and we asked them, they would be like, oh, I've been to all my dad's events for the last however many years. Like, I've seen him do his thing. Like, it's not even weird for him, guys. It's like someone else saying, I've seen my dad come home from work, with a briefcase. Like, they'd be like, it's just what he does every single day. They're just part of it. They're like living this whole life with me,
That's really cool, incorporating them and kind of like just like setting those rewards. I know, like, for my oldest, Nate, he's 4 going on 5. And for him, like, it's like, oh, like, dad goes to work so then he can, buy us candy or buy us some toys, or like they kind of know what the reward is going to be for them, or we're going to go on this trip to Disneyland, or so it's kind of cool to see that kind of lived out in my life. But speaking about working dads and like going to an office or whatever, versus entrepreneurship, where you can bring your kids more into, like, I can't bring my kids to the office. It's just not, they just don't allow it. For those people like myself, like, how can you bring your kids into those like environments, not per se at the office, but like, how do you create that same thing for dads who are not entrepreneurs, but
yeah.
working? Yeah.
No, I think it's stuff like, hey guys, so this is what dad does at work. Meaning, just sit down when you're in your where you live and talk them through it. But then, like, here's what dad's working on right now, and here's some of my goals. And by the way, when I hit this is the reward. Or, hey guys, dad and mom are going to try and go once a week on a date night. Here's why. You set a family goal. Like, hey, oldest sister, I need you to help babysit. And youngest brother, I need you to make sure that the house is clean when we get home, so mom's not stressed out. And like, you start enlisting them in like the bigger family goals and bigger family strategies versus, I don't think they have to come necessarily to the office one way or the other, but they just feel like they're part of it. They feel like it's not your thing, it's our thing. That's, I think, really the shift is where it's not mom's thing or dad's thing or our parents' thing. It's like, no, dude, this is our family thing. And so it's a family business, family career versus just something that dad does for work.
I'm the lucky one, guys. I work from home, so I just include them. So, yeah, I mean, I'm just being a dad and just you have 4 kids, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Growing up and just raising them and kind of coming from your childhood, is there anything that you've done differently with your kids, you as when you were younger, that you saw that you were like, man, I'm not going to do this? Is there anything that
Oh,
kind of
dude.
changed that? Yeah.
Yes. So let me start by saying this. I I love my dad. I've learned so many things from my dad. I'm very close to my dad. My dad's really like fine wine. He's just gotten better and better and better and better over the years. And he's an incredible grandpa. He's a fantastic father, but he's a really great grandpa. And so I give you all of that to say, when he was younger, he had some real, real challenges. One of which was his temper.
Mhm.
So his temper was pretty off the charts. My grandpa's temper was worse than my dad's, and my great grandpa never told my grandpa he loved him, never once. He called home from World War II, and his dad picked up. He goes, "Hello," and he goes, "Hey, Dad, it's me." I think he was in trying to think where he was stationed at that point, but he's overseas. And he goes, "Let me hand you to your mom." And so they had this really strange, hurtful relationship. You can imagine as a son, like you never had any acknowledgement from your dad at all. My grandpa played high school or college football, and his dad just never. They had a real strained relationship. So my point is, like my dad would some of that stuff it had like boiled down.
Mhm.
Like his temper, I mean, it was no joke, dude. that was he could lose it. And it's interesting now as I'm older. I don't know if you guys have had this experience where you're like, dude, my dad was 30. I'm 30. My dad was 35. I'm freaking 35. My dad was 50, or, depending on your age, you're like, holy crap, that's when I thought he was so old. Now you're that age.
Mhm.
But I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't even know if I could get that hot. I don't even know, like, what would you have to do to get me that hot? Like, you'd have to, like, break into my house, kidnap my kids to get me as hot as he could get on small things. Like he could. So I was just like, what was going on in his life that got him that hot that fast? Like what pains was he carrying around? What insecurities? What issues had he not processed through that whole thing? So I remember I made a decision that I said, I will never have my kids be scared of me.
Mhm.
I will never have my wife be scared of me. Because the truth is, there was times I was terrified of my dad, like legit, like, oh, and this isn't, by the way, we do live in a softer generation. This is way past being soft versus not soft. Like
Yeah.
this is because I do think we live in kind of a soft generation where it's like everyone tiptoes around. It's just so I'm not talking
Mhm.
about that. This was way past that. And I just remember making this promise, like I will never have my kids be scared of me ever. I'll never have my wife be scared of me. And that was just a commitment saying, instead of saying I'm going to fly off the handle because that's all I've ever seen, I took it as the flip side of like, I'm never flying off the handle like that, dude. That like, and I'm still highly competitive. Like, I wouldn't want to fight me, like I still feel like I'm very, like, don't like confuse my weakness or my kindness for weakness. Like, I'm not a weak
Mhm.
person for sure. But, the scriptures, by the way, it's interesting. Jesus talks about being meek, like the meek will inherit the earth. And I think a lot of times you think to yourself, meek is just like downward subservient glances and like we're just really like soft and meek and we get trampled on. Jordan Peterson has the best example of that. He says the rabbit that doesn't attack you is not meek. The tiger that doesn't eat you is meek. In other words, the rabbit can't hurt you.
Mhm.
So you want to be highly powerful and highly strong and highly dangerous. You just learn to control it.
Mhm.
Do you know what I'm saying? That's meekness. Meekness is I could tear you in half, but I don't because I'm a restrained, calm person. That's what you want to be. And I just feel like with my dad, like I don't feel like I'm weak for sure, but I also I don't have those trigger points where I could get that hot. I can't even imagine how long it would take me to get there.
Yeah, I get you. And I think, for me and DJ, he had issues with his dad when he was younger. And then I've had issues with anger in the past, but like my dad wasn't angry. And so like, I don't know where I got it from, but, there was parts of me that I'd gone through some crap. We'll
Yep.
leave it there. And it did come out on my kids. And it's like, I do regret that. You come back and think about it, you're like, why I hate that that
Yep.
happened. But it is all about changing it, just breaking those generational curses, because that's what becoming a strong dad is all about, is changing your family for the better, instead of
Yes.
just being like, well, I'll just do the easy route and do what my dad did.
That's
Because
exactly right.
something we say on here a lot is like, it's very easy to be a bad parent. It's very hard sometimes to be a good parent.
Yeah, that's well said. I agree with that.
We just, that's how we feel. And it's good. And like you said, we are kind of in a soft generation, so it is good that we step up as strong dads right now.
Yeah, again, that strength, like we talked about, that strength is you're not you don't mistake my kindness for weakness. I'm not weak. Like, you're the tiger.
Mm-hmm.
You get, you're strong, you're in shape, you can defend your family, but you're not but you learn to control it. You learn to restrain it. You learn how to not fly off the handle and react to everything. I think that's really that's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. As we're kind of coming up on time here, make sure we're respectful of everybody's time. We always like to ask this to kind of end the episode, but what is one piece of advice that you have for any dad just starting out, going through the thick of it, later in life? What's that one piece of advice that you can give them? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a philosophy I built my career on, which is no success outside your home will compensate for failure inside your home. And so, all of the money you make, all the awards that you earn, all the recognition, all the Instagram followers, whatever, if your house is falling apart, none of that stuff really means that much. So you want to make sure you get your house in order and keep your house in order. Like, you're taking time for yourself. You're taking time for your spouse, meaning you're healthy, right? You can't give from an empty plate. Like, empty plates don't feed starving kids. You can't give what you don't have.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to make sure you invest some energy and time into making sure that you have something to give, but then also invest it into your girl, like invest it into your wife, make sure she's filled up, and then invest it into those kids. Those kids are the legs of your legacy. And so, and it's really interesting. My oldest now is 21. My little girl is about to graduate high school and move out. I'm just like, what the freak is happening? Like, when you're in it, you think that these kids will be there forever, because it's just, you have them for 18 years and it just feels like you're always going to have them. Man, this whole thing moves on fast. And so you want to make sure that you're investing that time in the real successes of life, which is, your marriage, those kids.
Right.
And it can be obviously hard to balance all this stuff at some point. I get all that, but those are the real races you want to make sure you win.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to your original point of incorporating your family into the things you do.
Yeah.
So like, they're winning as you're winning, and your successes are their successes. So it's kind of like, it keeps everything in alignment, and you're making sure your home is good, but you're also incorporating them into the business or into your job, what you're doing, and the rewards that are coming from it, and the goals that you have. And so it all just stays in alignment. So
That's
I
right.
like that. Awesome. Well, I just want to say, first and foremost, thank you for being on. Thank you for sharing your insights, your knowledge, and sharing some of the things that are vulnerable. Because I feel like that's what great leaders are. They're vulnerable, and they'll be willing to talk about their story, so that if it could help somebody, just one person, you're willing to share. So I appreciate that. One thing, like, where can people find you? I know you have your book out, Be the One. So want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, you can go to IamJustinPrince.com. I'm on all social media platforms. I am Justin Prince or Justin Prince. And listen, I put out a ton of content that I think will add a ton of value to your life, just free content. So I do it, by the way, at this stage of my career to serve the next generation of, dads and of entrepreneurs and of men that are trying to live a significant life. So I'm hoping it will be stuff, that will uplift you, inspire you, and all, then also teach you, strategic strategies and tools and tactics. Be the one you can get wherever you get your favorite books, and I'd love to hear your feedback as you read the book as well.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you for your time. Everyone's listening. Go check them out, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Love you guys. Bye.
Yep.